So today we're going to talk about conceptual composition. Before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about what these classes are all about, why I do them, who I am, that kind of thing. So I teach drawing fundamentals in real life at an animation school, and I'm trying to take what I do in the classroom and bring it to the internet. And I'm still figuring out how to best do that. I started with YouTube videos, but I quickly realized that that's not really that good of an analog to how I teach. Like you have to have hooks and you gotta like jingle the keys a lot for 12-year-olds. And no offense to 12-year-olds, but that's not really what I want to do. And I don't think that's the best way to learn either. There's already so much out there. Instead, I'm doing live classes that are as close to a class in person or like a Zoom class that I was doing during the pandemic as I think I can do. It's not quite the same because these have to be one-offs so that anybody who's joining, they don't have to have been to a previous class to know what's going on, which does make a big difference. But as far as free content, right now it's the best I can do. Today we're going to talk about conceptual composition, and this is how you structure information in your artwork so that when the audience or the viewer looks at your artwork, they know what they're looking at. They understand the ideas that you wanted to communicate with them. Because for me, I think art is really, it's all about communication. Like it's a form of communication, which is why we do it. Um, so usually you want to try to communicate as clearly as possible. And if your information is organized, then who's ever looking at it will be able to understand it more easily than if it's chaotic and it's all over the place. This is actually very similar to writing composition that you might have had in your English class or your language classes when you were in middle school, high school, etc., where they taught you how to structure your ideas so that somebody else reading your work can understand what you mean versus like a string of like unconnected phrases and stuff where somebody reading it has to struggle to understand what is important in what you're saying and what's supporting and that sort of thing. So before I get into too much, let me throw it out to you guys. What And you can type in the chat if you would prefer not to speak. What challenges do you think you might face uh, trying to communicate your message through an image?
Definitely probably trying to communicate too many things at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that can very much be a problem. Then that's one of the things that I want to cover tonight. So yeah, that leads into it really nicely. So let's just go from there. So just like with writing, when you're communicating, you have your main idea. This is like the most important thing that you want to say. This is your organizing principle. This is the introduction. This is the conclusion of your essay. If somebody takes away nothing else from your image, it should be the main idea. And you want this to be as clear as possible. But ideas, especially in images, they don't make sense on their own. They need context to be understandable. So to do that, you have supporting ideas. Like if you're writing an essay, you have your main idea in the intro, and then you have the supporting ideas to convince your reader that your main idea actually makes sense. So your main idea is supported by supporting ideas, and those supporting ideas, they require supporting ideas of their own. And you work your way down this chain until you get to like the physical reality that you're trying to explain in your image. Because we're drawing, most of the stuff that we're going to draw is like physical things that you can imagine seeing. So you get down to the physical reality, um, maybe objects, characters, etc. And then those are made up of forms. Those forms are hit by light, and those forms are they're in positions. If you were at the intro to Drawing from Imagination lecture a couple weeks ago, I talked about all this stuff. And these ideas are represented by the visual elements themselves that make up a drawing. So the form could be described by lines, shapes. The light can be described by value, etc. So when this chain is working well, then your every line, every shape supports the main idea directly. So the lines support the forms, which support the object, which supports supporting ideas all the way up the chain. Um, Likewise, if something is wrong here, if something is weaker, so let's say I'm not very good at describing forms. My forms are like misshapen and they don't really make sense. That undermines my objects, which undermines my supporting ideas and undermines further up the chain. So we're not this how to actually describe forms with lines and shapes. That is beyond the scope of this lecture, but you can read about it in my book that you can find on my website through the profile or on Discord in the official resources channel. So let's do a really simple example. Here is my composition. What is this a drawing of?
Happy person.
It is a happy person. How do you know?
Well, now that's the first read that I get. I guess with the two eyes and the smile. But yeah, I guess it could be a part of a balloon. Be a
So you
balloon
get
attached to a
eyes,
string.
you have a mouth,
Yep.
and that mouth is smiling, so that gives you the happy person. So yeah, this is a extremely simple composition, but it does still follow. And then the eyes are described by a shape, and the smile is also described by a shape. So this is an extremely simple composition, but it does make sense in our our conceptual composition. I would also add proportion. So the arrangement of these makes them a face. So if I move this over here and move this over here, doesn't really look like a face anymore. Or you could, but it's very unclear. So this is all very clear. If I add extra stuff, so I'll add some toes and a heel. So I have my, and let's change this from a happy person to a face just to make this clear. So my face, I have eyes, nose, mouth, toes, and heel. Is this more or less of a face?
Less of
This
a
is
face.
less of a face. So the point here is that any ideas that don't support the main idea distract from the main idea. So you said too many ideas at once. This is an example of that. So you need to decide what is the most important thing, and then you need to focus on that. Um, I mean, you're not accidentally going to make Weird Footman, but it's kind of the general idea. So there's another way that this can go wrong as well. So what if I, instead of drawing the mouth as that shape, what if I go ham and get in there and draw all the teeth and the lips I'm going to add a little bit of hatching to really make the forms of those teeth clear. Get the value in there. Do some hatching on the lips. Those nice, round, luscious lips this guy's got.
Except for
So,
the tiny eyes.
except for the tiny eyes. So, what's happening with the face? Is this adding to, or is this distracting from the face? Adding this information.
Definitely am focusing on the mouth now.
Right. So, what's happened here is, well, look at the conceptual composition. So, I have the face, it has eyes, it has a mouth. The eyes are shapes. The mouth has lips, and it has teeth. The lips have form. The teeth have form. And then those are uh, lines and shapes. So now the mouth has more supporting information than the whole rest of the composition. So the mouth has overpowered the rest of the face. So instead of adding clarity, this extra detail actually subtracts clarity by making the mouth compete to be the main idea. So if I get the read of this, I actually think the mouth is the main idea, and that the face becomes a supporting idea to the mouth, or that they're competing. Either way, it's weird. I don't like this guy. So let's look at an example of this from classical art. I showed this a couple weeks ago as well. I like to go back to this painting because I think it demonstrates the concepts that I teach in imaginative drawing. Um, so what is happening here? What are we looking at? What's the main idea of this painting?
You got a gladiator standing over these people that he's, I guess, struck down, and looks like he's waiting for the crowd or someone in the crowd to basically tell him whether or not to execute
Yeah,
those people.
yeah. There's this whole moment of drama, this whole scene here. I'm gonna boil this scene down into gladiatorial, which I'm probably spelling wrong, combat, just to keep this simpler. Um, and you've already kind of touched on it, but how do we know? What are the supporting ideas that make it clear that this is gladiatorial combat?
Well, he's clearly in some sort of a ring, and people are clearly watching him. So
So
there's some level of entertainment.
we have the arena, we have the crowd. Yeah, that's all important. And then the gladiator, right? Like they're not watching football, not watching a hockey game. It's a gladiator. Um, and then let's go deeper. How do we know that this is a gladiator? What is the supporting information?
The armor. Oh, sorry.
Armor. Yeah. Try to, or don't worry about talking over each other. I know that like in real life that's rude, but on the internet we don't like in real life there's like social cues, so you know when it's your turn to speak. In on the internet we don't have those, so um, people end up not talking at all to avoid speaking over each other. So the best solution I've come up with this is you just talk over each other, and then we sort it out afterwards. Same thing goes with when I'm talking. By all means, please interrupt me. So yeah, we have the armor, we have the weapons, and then it's a human, right? That's important. It's not a mannequin with those armor and weapons. So how do we know that this is armor? Because remember, we're not looking at armor. We're not looking at a gladiator. What we're really looking at is shapes and colors on a screen. The gladiator, the armor, the combat. All of this is ideas that's been communicated through these shapes and these colors. So how do we know that this is armor or weapons? Either one.
The shapes.
The shapes. So yeah, the texture. So we'll get to the shapes. Texture. Let's call it metal. So metal texture. Or how do we know it's metal because of the texture? It could do it that way too. And then how do we know? Then there's the shine. And that is defined by shape and color. And then the metal texture as well. That's color. There's the form, which is shape and value. The point is, we could do this for any of the aspects of this painting. We could follow the conceptual tree down to we get to the actual marks on the canvas, the actual colors and shapes of the paint. The point being that every color, every shape supports an idea, which supports an idea, all the way up to the main idea. So all of these ideas, they have to come from somewhere. Where do these ideas come from? Imagination? I don't think so. I mean, inspiration. Not really. No. I mean, like maybe the entire idea, but it wasn't inspiration that told uh, Jerome, the painter here. It wasn't inspiration that told Jerome that gladiators wear helmets the way they do or have swords the way they do. It was reference. It was research. As imagine so Jerome may have imagined the scene, like the overall concept, but the actual ideas that that scene is built on, those have to come from real life in some way or another. Because if we just make them up wholesale, then the audience is not going to recognize what they are, and it will be confusing. So we need to make this stuff out of real stuff. Like the Colosseum is made out of stone, the gladiator's helmet is made out of armor, the gladiator is made out of flesh. And then to know what information we want to put into our composition, we can find that information through, we could do some of it through memory, but most of it's going to come through research and reference, which is the other point of this lecture, is a little bit on how to use reference. One of the biggest problems I see in beginner and often intermediate artwork too is people just don't know what stuff looks like, which is completely normal. I don't know what everything looks like, at least not well enough to draw it. But if I want to draw it believably, I'm going to do my research and I'm going to reference and I'm going to figure out what it looks like so that when I have that information to put into my artwork to make it believable. That was a lot of talking. Let me just take a brief pause to give you guys a chance to ask any questions. How can you use reference in research and actually draw it? Great question. I struggle getting the shape. Okay. So the struggle with the shape that might be that, like if you're looking at something and you have trouble drawing it believably, that would be a more fundamental issue than the compositional issues that we're talking about here. So that would be outside of the realm of this lecture. Again, check the first chapter of my book um, for more of the basic how to translate what you see um, into images. But as far as how to use reference, let's get into that now. So let's say I'm drawing a stone wall. And this is what I come up with. I don't do any reference. This is just purely out of memory in my head. And my stone wall, and it's made out of stone. And I represent those stone with lines. Not that deep. Why make this so complicated? Um, but does this look good? Does this Is this very convincing as a stone wall?
If you didn't tell me it was a stone wall, I don't know if I would have necessarily known immediately that it was a stone wall.
Yeah, I feel similarly. Like it could be a stone wall. It could be like corn. It's not super obvious what this is, and it's like it's all right. It's kind of cartoony. This isn't gonna like convince anybody that this is that realistic. So let's say you took my perspective class, and I spent a whole bunch of times telling you that to be realistic, you need perspective. So it looks kind of flat. Let's throw in some perspective. So I add those perspective lines, and then I add the the wall, add the rocks. Um, so I've made this conceptual composition a little bit more complicated. So now it's uh, stone wall, and that stone wall has like an overall form and depth, and that form is made out of stone, and those stones are described with lines. It's better. I'll get rid of the perspective lines, but is it that convincing?
Not completely. Looks like it could almost be like scales that are stuck on the side of a box, maybe.
Yeah, it's better than before, but yeah, if I was doing my background design class and I got this submission, I'd have some stuff to say about it. I don't think this is very good. This is like PlayStation One Stonewall, where you have the low polygon and you kind of draw the texture onto the sides of that polygon. It's not that believable. So a big part of why these don't look very good to me is that these lines aren't very convincingly stone. They don't look that much like stone specifically. Like you said, if you didn't know these were stones, they might be scales, they might be like kernels of corn. They're just kind of like generic lines. So you listen to my lecture and you're like, oh, takeaway, reference. I need to use reference. So you go out, you take a photo of a stone wall, and where'd that? There we go. And then you go and you copy the reference. Looks a lot better, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it does, but it still could be better. Like it's still kind of flat. It looks more like stones, but I don't know. It's not like not that good. And the other problem is it looks exactly like the reference. So this isn't going to work if I want to draw. Like my other stone wall was in a different perspective. Like we're kind of looking down at it. So it doesn't, if I needed this for a specific background, this wouldn't work very well. So, um, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So what I've done here in my conceptual composition is actually the same. It's a stone wall, it's stone, and it's lines. So I have taken new information from reference, but I haven't really done anything conceptually with it. It's still very basic. So I took the lines from my reference and I copied them to my drawing. So this is where you want to use conceptual composition to structure the information that you're getting for your reference. We'll take a quick dip back to Polus Verso because there's a lot of reference used in this. It's really obvious that or at least it's really obvious if you spent any time drawing that you're not doing this out of your head without seeing any of this stuff before. That's just not going to happen. Get all these details. So obviously there was reference that was used, but also this was not painted during the Roman Empire, so it's not like Jerome could have gone to the Colosseum and seen a gladiator fight and taken pictures or drawn it there. So he had to take reference and recombine it. So the armor, all of that stuff, this came from reference separately and was combined into this composition. So let's do the same thing with the stone wall. So I have my stones, and I'm going to study these stones. I'm going to take elements from these stones, and I'm going to combine them into my composition. So I have my stone wall, and it's made of stones. And these stones, they have form, they have planes, they have texture, and I'm studying these actual things. Like I'm studying how to describe the form of the stones, how to describe that licheny texture on them. And then I can take those stones and I can combine them into my wall. So I don't have to be beholden to my reference. I can take the information from my reference and then I can recombine it and create something new. So would you agree that this wall is better than the previous three?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because I've taken that information and I've recontextualized it into my own thing. I'm also not limited by the perspective of my reference. I can take that information and draw it in a different perspective because I've studied it. So this is a really simple example, but we can look at some more complicated ones. So this is something I found on ArtStation. My apologies to the artist. I don't remember who did this, but it's a really nice example of how this composition is this ruined church, and then they referenced all of this stuff separately to include in the ruined church. So there's the pews, there's rubble, there's these, I don't know what you call these things. They're like anti-troop things, that those are there. There's a cannon, like a World War I era cannon, I think that is. So they didn't have to find a ruined church. There's an organ. Didn't have to find a ruined church that had a battle taking place in it, because you're probably not going to be able to go find that these days. So they took a bunch of different items and then they recombined them, but they referenced them, so they're not just making them up. Similar thing going on here is that you have this medieval or Roman style fortification, like a lot of stone and masonry, and then you have a radio tower inside of it. So they didn't have to go find a fortification that had a radio tower. Instead, they were able to study these things independently and then recombine them in their composition. These examples, these are just to kind of show the process, I would assume. I wasn't there when they did them, but I can kind of tell by the drawing that these are like the reference they show here is the tip of the iceberg. Like this radio tower is drawn from a different angle than in the photo. They didn't just copy the lines in the photo, they understood the parts of the radio tower and then were able to draw it from a different angle. So they would have had to do more than look at it from just one photo. Again, I mentioned earlier that one of the big problems I see with beginner and intermediate art is not knowing what stuff looks like. And a lot of times they'll do in this situation is they'll go and find one picture. That's the reference. Okay, I have one picture. Now I know what this looks like. But do you really know what something looks like from just one photo? Do you know it well enough to draw it from different angles? No, probably not. Like, you really need to study things more deeply than that if you're going to draw them from imagination. It sounds ironic that, like, I am talking about drawing from imagination as I understand it, but you're still drawing it from having studied actual things. That doesn't mean that you're limited to just the actual things, though. You can, if you've studied them well enough, then you can modify and combine them. So, for example, this is one that I did, so I do know that the conceptual the research that went into this, and this is again the tip of the iceberg here. So I have this dinosaur, and I can't go out and reference a dinosaur for obvious reasons. I could reference other artists' drawing of a dinosaur, but if I want to do my own thing, then I have to build it up. I have to think about what the dinosaur is made of. So it has a skull that defines the forms of its head. So I have a model raptor skull that I used, and I studied it from a bunch of different angles until I understood its form. It has muscle. It has muscle. Oh no, I forgot. Class was today. It's also tomorrow, right? No, sorry, this is the only one. Well, there was one this morning, but yeah, there's no more class tomorrow. But these will be recorded, so you can catch up with those if you want. So there's muscle, that the skulls are made of muscle, and I found diagrams of online of dinosaur anatomy. It wasn't the same species, but I can make assumptions as to the crossover because I assume that those diagrams came from looking at extant species and making assumptions for the crossover there. So there's the muscles that connect the jaw. There's a muscle that stabilizes the jaw. There's muscles that control the eyes, etc., like that. But I also need the surface information. So I want to make my dinosaur scaly and feathery. So I looked at scales, did some studies on scales of extant species. So I have the crocodile, studied how those scales look. And for the feathers, I studied birds, how their feathers look, how their eyes look, and translated that information into and recombined it into something new. Again, this is the tip of the iceberg. Like I did a lot more studies than what you see here to come up with this. And there's design choices as well, to make it visually the way I wanted, not just accurate, but like what I consider visually appealing. But the idea is still that I'm taking reference from multiple sources and I am organizing them into a conceptual composition that points to the main idea. So my main idea is the dinosaur. Really should be spelling that one right. Dinosaur. It has skull, which has forms, lines and shapes. It has eyes. It has muscles, feathers, and scales. And all of these supporting ideas are ideas that I went and I researched in order to recombine them and in order to like actually have this information. So I'm not just guessing what things look like. So I know what things look like when I'm combining them to make my final artwork. So I've been talking for a while. I will pause and take a breath and give you guys a chance to ask any questions or add any thoughts of your own. How can you practice getting the form right? Um, that Let me put a pin on that for now. That's definitely outside of the scope of this lecture, but we have a little bit of extra time, so I can circle back to that. I don't Doesn't look like anybody else had any questions. Um, so before I get into that though, let me talk a little bit more about the overall class structure. Um, so when I do this lecture in my real life classes, it's part of a larger context where there would be an assignment and this information is necessary to do the assignment correctly. So they would be doing in this case they'd be doing a background assignment, but I could do this just as easily in a character design class or um, really any like vehicle design, anything like that, where the assignment is to create something new, but that something new has to be created out of other things. Then the next weeks they would bring in work in progress and then the final result of that project and get feedback. So there is a cycle of theory, which is the lecture, and then they go off and they do the work. A theory project, so assignments, they do the work, and then the next week they get feedback to make sure they understand the theory, and then we start again. This is the cycle of learning stuff to get better. Because these are one-offs, we can't quite do this. I can tell you that in my classes, I do an in-class assignment for this lecture, and that is to design a bicycle. And it's like really quickly design a bicycle. So the first time we all like, I ground it. We all know what bicycles look like. You've probably ridden one before. So go ahead and design a bicycle without any reference. And my students are at animation school, so they already know that you should reference stuff. So it's kind of beating a belabored point, but if this is not something that's obvious to you, you know what bicycles look like, go try to draw one without reference. See what happens. You'll quickly realize that you don't actually know what bicycles look like all that much. Like you get the overall idea, there's two wheels, there's the seat, there's the handlebars, but how does the frame work? Where does all this stuff connect? You might not know. I mean, maybe you repair bicycles or you ride bicycles all the time. You know how the frame works and all that stuff, but if you don't have that experience, you probably don't. And then the next time I have them design a bicycle where they get one photo and their drawing gets better, but it's limited because you're limited to one photo. And the final assignment or the final part of the assignment is you can look at as many photos. I give them a little lecture about the different parts of the bicycle, what they do, how they fit together, the conceptual composition of a bicycle, if you will, and then they can look at as many photos of bicycles as they want, and they can recombine a bicycle. And these end up being by far the best designs. Um, So these one-offs, I can't really do that kind of thing because these lectures have to be something where you can jump in anytime. But because I want to do the things I do in the classroom on the internet as much as I can, I am preparing or will soon be releasing a course. Uh, just February 2nd, so a week from Monday, this will be out. And in the course is like basic drawing from life, and each there it's a series of videos. It's not going to be quite as good as being in real life where you come and you get feedback, but it's gives you theory, it gives you projects and exercises, so you know what to study, and then you do the work. I'm going to create a section on the Discord where you can post to get feedback. Um, de- it depends how much of it I can get to, considering that this is a free course. So some of that feedback's going to have to be from the community as well. I won't be able to do all of it myself, depending on how popular this gets. But just know that I do have plans to make this more grounded. And how can you practice getting form right? Well, that lecture or that series is going to cover not just how to get form right, but a lot of but that is one of the things, how to get form right, that kind of thing. And I will be doing the weekly lectures, at least at first, for that course. So there'll be videos, but you can also do it in a live course form. Um, any thoughts or questions on all of that? Sounds good. Um, yeah, and then eventually I'm hoping to make paid courses as well, which will be much more like the IRL courses that will have um, the full cycle where you get feedback, you come in the next day or the next lesson, you have assignments, you come in the next lesson, you get feedback, get the new theory, and that cycle keeps going for as long as it takes, or not as long as it takes, but for the duration of the course to get to a specific goal. Those will be further down the line. I I can do them, but I just need to get the logistics of knowing enough people are interested that I can have like a real class. And I'm still figuring that stuff out as well. Going to do the free class first and see how that goes and build off of that. So just wanted to let you know what's coming down the road in this Discord server. If you're watching this on YouTube, especially if you're watching this recorded, come by, join the Discord server. The link is on the website or in my channel profile. I don't know. I'm not tech savvy. Or you could subscribe. Make sure you don't miss it that way. So I'll do a little teaser on form because, oh, I'm doing amazing work. Thank you, Waffleson. Really appreciate that. Um, so we got a few minutes left. So let's, actually, why don't I throw this to you guys? Do you want to do a really quick conceptual composition and like some bare minimum of referencing, or should I go over a quick and dirty way to practice form?
Quick and dirty.
Practice. I got one practice form and I got one quick and dirty composition one. Um, well, I know that the form one is coming, and this is the composition lecture. So let's do the composition. Um, okay, so we have a character. Who is the character? Let's just throw some stuff out there. Like, is this character a human? Is this character an alien? That sort of thing. Um, let's make the character human. So that's part of um, the compositional, the conceptual composition. What does this human do?
Taxi driver.
They're a taxi driver. Okay. And what time period? We can get creative too. It doesn't have to be realistic.
The 70s. Haunted 70s.
So are we doing the haunted 70s? I'll make those separate. So a taxi driver in the 70s and the cab is haunted. Okay, so how do we know that this is a taxi driver?
The taxi
Okay, there's a taxi.
nearby, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. What else? How else would you know somebody's a taxi driver? Maybe a taxi driver is not a great example because they don't like have a uniform. Taxi drivers look like all kinds of different people. We'll keep the rest of it. Let's 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 give this guy something else to do. Something more visual.
Fireman.
A farmer? Is that what you said?
A firefighter. Fireman.
Oh, a firefighter. Okay. Firefighter. Okay, how do you know that they're a firefighter?
His gear.
Their
His
clothing.
uniform.
I have protective clothes. Maybe they have a uniform.
Helmet, oxygen, mask.
Helmet. Yeah, lots of stuff here. So the like oxygen thing that those guys carry. How do we know it's the 70s?
Maybe
Older.
there's some cars parked on the
Like
street
modern.
nearby that would give away the time period, maybe.
An older model vehicle.
Yeah, so they have the older fire truck. I have to look at what those looked like in the 70s. And the 70s weren't that long ago. Like you could maybe tell the truck. The buildings, I guess the buildings would be older. Like there's no modern buildings, but like there's buildings from the 50s today. There's buildings from the 50s and the 70s. Like if this was the 1800s, that makes more of a difference. But we don't have to harp on it being the 70s too much. I like the helmet that can tie in as well. So what about how do we know that it's haunted? Or maybe let's not make him haunted. Let's make him a ghost. Because haunted is more like a building is haunted. I've never heard of someone calling a person haunted. How do we know that the firefighter is actually a ghost?
Making a skin white.
So like pale skin,
Yeah,
see-through,
yeah.
Levitating, maybe.
levitating. Okay, so if we get all of these ideas, and some of these we can research and some of these we can't. Some of these we don't have to, right? Like levitating is just making him not on the ground. So let's bring up the old Google Images machine. Come on. This isn't, sorry, I'm like fighting with my browser that you guys can't see. What? Okay. Got it. So let's start with the firefighter helmet 70s. So perfect. This is the kind of stuff that I would be referencing. Oh, this is great because you can really get in here and get all the details. So I'm not going. We only have 5 minutes left, so I'm not going to save all of these to like a mood board. But this is the kind of thing. I would want multiple angles of this. Like, there's a really high quality image, and it's the same site, of course. Um, and I don't have to look at only ones from the 70s. I could look at a modern one and try to um, adjust, like try to combine that with what I know about the vintage ones. Sketchfab is a fantastic website for reference because you can look at 3D models. So,
Huge fan of
firefighter
Sketchfab.
helmet. Sorry, say that again.
No, I was just saying I'm a huge fan of Sketchfab. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. And like, look at this. It's not, I mean, it does look like the 70s one, so I would know exactly what to do. So I'm going to get this right. I would study this stuff too. I'm not just going to look at pictures and then draw it. Like I'm going to actually study. I got all the stuff, the protective clothes a little bit. Let's get let's get another firefighter. Oh, the protective clothes. Now, like this kind of thing. This is great. Like, this is another big part of conceptual research where you're not just looking at one picture, you can actually go in and why? What kind of stuff do I need? And why do they have it? So there's the helmet, there's the mask, there's the hood. Because like if I didn't do this research, I don't know that firefighters wear hoods when they go into a fire. I haven't been rescued from a burning fire. I'm not a fireman. I could have easily missed that, and it would have like probably would have been okay. Maybe in the 70s they didn't have hoods, but it would be less realistic than if I went in and I can like SCBA. What is self-contained breathing apparatus? So scuba minus the underwater part. This is all stuff that I can use. The gloves, so SCBA firefighter. How important is the SCBA? Like I can really go in here and well, open image in new tab. Okay, well this isn't working great, but like you get the idea. So here's a better one. All of the stuff that these are made out of. And I don't need to put all of this into every image that I draw, but you could see how being able to know this and being able to do this is going to make my firefighter that much more grounded in reality and that much more clear that it's a firefighter, along with all the other stuff, the being translucent and levitating, all that good stuff. This has taught me a lot already about concepting. Great. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. So we're gonna wrap in like a minute or two. Before I do that, let me throw the floor open to you guys if there is anything that you wanted me or anything else that you want to add or any questions before we wrap. What's the best way to plan a composition? Um, so I don't like to use terms like best for stuff like this because it really depends. Like there would be a best way for me with the way my mind works and the way I like to draw, but I can't tell you what the best way is for you. And it depends on the subject as well. For something like a firefighter where there's all of this information that I need to have to make the firefighter look believable, I'm going to do this kind of research. If I'm drawing like a cartoon mouse, I don't need to know mouse anatomy to do that. It's a cartoon. It's going to be much more abstracted. So I would study other cartoons, like that kind of thing. So it really depends on what you want to do and just how you work in general. Um, any other thoughts before we wrap? Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming out. This has been a lot of fun and doesn't work without you guys. Um, we do these every or twice a day, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Western Standard Time, -8 UTC. Keeping motivated. Is that a question about keeping motivated to do art? Yes. Hmm. This is, I don't know. I'm not good at answering these ones. This is a very personal thing. Like, I don't know you, so I don't know what motivates you. Um, like, I've always been very motivated to do this kind of stuff, like, sometimes to a fault. So it's not something that I ever really have had to deal with, the lack of motivation. Also, I do this for a living. So, paying my bills and eating every day is pretty motivating. Um, just a spur of the moment thing. What I would say, if I could give any advice on motivation, it's that, um, or a couple things, is that having habits is really good. Like if you do it every day and that becomes a habit, then you're more likely to keep doing it every day. It becomes less about motivation and more just habit. Um, and then the other thing is expression. Like you have things in your heart, in your soul, that you want to communicate to the world, and art is a way to do that. So that I find that pretty motivating too. And then that for studying, you want to study so you can get better at putting those things out into the world. Okay, so thanks again, everybody, for coming. We do these every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. UTC, -8 Pacific Standard Time. Um, if you're not on my Discord, I definitely recommend checking it out. That's where I post all of this kind of information about like when lessons are going to be, that kind of thing. And subscribing, I think, will give you that information as well as far as when the live streams are. But there's other stuff that goes on in the Discord. We chat. You can ask me questions. I have a book that's for free that you can download on my website, which is linked in the video description, or maybe not the video description. It's on my profile. You'll find it if you click on stuff. Um, you can join the Discord for that as well. And yeah, thanks again, and good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.